Wrong camera. Turn around. That's better. No, because I had it on the other camera from Shabbat UK.
The end of the book instead of your face.
Yeah. I think that's quite interesting. The end of the book is not bad. I think this is better. Do you know what's interesting? When you speak about showing them the end of the book, I spoke recently in Manchester Sem, in the girls' seminary, and we were talking. It was actually a very strange thing. It was one of these ironic things. You know when you have ironic things that happen to you? So it was a really ironic thing that happened to me. And basically what happened was the following. I got a phone call about 9 o'clock in the morning where somebody says, "Hello, is this Rabbi Eisberg? Yeah. Could you come to the SEM?" I'm like, "When do you want me to come to the SEM?" Now? I'm like, "What, now? What do you want?" Somebody's not showed up. Could you give a lesson instead of them? I said, "Okay, fine. No problem." I've been working with my wife on a shiur. So I had something up my sleeve. So I got there and I saw the timetable and they showed me what it was. And I had a look at it and I said, "Okay, what is it that they have now?" Well, they have a lesson now by Mrs. So-and-so on lesson planning. And then afterwards they'll have something else. So as ironic as it sounds, I gave a lesson on lesson planning without having planned that lesson. Yeah, which is very ironic, but so we did it. And it went okay. So part of the lesson planning, I asked this question, which I like to ask people. Why is it, especially I wanted to hear from the girls really. You go to weddings, have you ever been to frum weddings? Yeah? When you go to frum wedding, what's it like during the speeches? Loud. Yeah? Quite loud. And I said to the women, I said, "Can you explain something to me? Why is it so loud on your side of the mechitza? What's going on?" No, not they can't hear.
Can't talk.
They can't see.
Can't see.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Can't see.
Can't see, right.
Can't see because the man. See, if you imagine if this was the mechitza right here, right? Yeah. So the man stands here. Yeah. You know, and the women are sitting there. So he can't see. And that you just hear this voice droning in the background, going on for ages, and you're like, "All right, I'm not listening to this. Out." Yeah. And so therefore they don't. So I think if I would show the back of the book and people just hear my voice droning on, I don't think that would have made for a good... No. Yeah. Okay.
By the way, it doesn't preclude that they can't see nor can they hear. It's both.
It could be that they can't hear either, you know. But the problem, the reason they can't hear is because they're talking to their friends. So it's very hard to hear and to listen while you're talking to someone else. I find that usually I struggle with that also.
I would never go to any shiur or talk where I can't see the person talking.
Would you?
I would never go.
Right.
I would try and make sure I've got a seat where I can see them talking.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But, you know, at a wedding, you're a captive audience whether you like it or not.
Sure.
Yeah? So you're just going to have to go with it.
If I couldn't see the speaker, I'd go and talk to my friend.
I can understand that.
You just have a projector screen, you can actually see the...
I know, but they don't have a projector and it's expensive. And I found actually, even with projector screens, it's not helped. Do you know what really helps? A, being seen, but B, if you speak to people, not because you want to hear your voice. And I find a lot of people who go to weddings and speak at weddings, you just find they either waffle on or talk nonsense or talk a Dvar Torah, even if they don't talk nonsense, talk Divrei Torah. But the Dvar Torah, they give like a 20-minute shiur and then they just mention on the sidelines, you know, the Mishkan. Apropos Mishkan, I want to speak about this Mishkan Me'at, this little Mishkan that is now being built by this young couple. And you think to yourself, but that's not really what you were talking about. The entire talk about something totally different. No wonder nobody was listening. Now, talking about the Mishkan, Pekudei. Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdus HaSher Pukah HaPim. These are the countings of the Mishkan. The Mishkan of Edus means of testimony, which were counted by Moshe. Avodas Avim Yad Yisrael Ben Aaron. The work of the Levian in the hand of Isama, the son of Aaron the Kohen. Okay? So what we have here is interesting. He says the Mishkan is a Mishkan HaEdus. We're going to speak about this a little bit tonight. The tabernacle that gives testimony. What's the testimony that it gives? What are we talking about? Says Rashi, the Mishkan is an Edus LeYisrael, the Mishkan is it gives testimony for the Jewish people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has forgiven the Jewish people for what they've done for the Egel, because he was willing to put a Shechina amongst them. So the Gemara, on the side, it's actually interesting. What you sometimes have what's called Mefarshim on Mefarshim. So you have a Rashi on a Rashi. So we have is called that there's actually a lot of very famous Mefarshim on Rashi. One of them being the Maral. Maral of Prague wrote a sefer called the Gur Aryeh, which is a brilliant sefer exposition on Rashi. The other very famous one is written by Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi. Nothing to do with the Rabbi Mizrahi who's coming to town with a big hullabaloo. Nothing to do with him. Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi was a 16th century scholar, so he was a big scholar and he was a big writer on Rashi. And then you have a bit of a conglomerate, somebody has put them all together, and it's called the Sifsei Chachamim, brought over here on the side. And the Sifsei Chachamim asked the question, he says, why did I need a Mishkan to prove that Hashem has forgiven the Jewish people? I got a better proof that Hashem has forgiven the Jewish people. A much earlier proof that Hashem has forgiven the Jewish people. Because let's go, Iris is here. Michael, say hello.
Hi, Iris.
Yeah, wave.
Do my bit.
Okay, we've done our bit now. Okay, that's a tradition now. Here we are again, Iris. There we go. Right?
Tell us you don't need to check on me every week.
You don't have to check on him every week, he says. You do, but don't take it from me. Right. So the question that Sifsei Chachamim asks is the following: if we go through the timeline, what's the timeline of what happened? Hashem came and gave the 10 Commandments. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up the mountain. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down the mountain because the Jewish people had sinned. Moshe, right, and made the golden calf. And after the golden calf, what happens? He breaks the tablets. Whoever was guilty got killed. End of that part of the story. Then we move into the next part of the story. What happens for the next 40 days? Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the mountain and he davens to Hashem. He says, God, you have to forgive the Jewish people, and if you don't, then I'm out of here, etc., etc. And God forgives the Jewish people. Part 2 of the story. What's part 3 of the story? What does Hashem say? And we read this every fast day, at least once, usually twice. Vayom Hashem Moshe pesal lecha shnei luchos avanim karishanim. Go and hew out new tablets similar to the first tablets. Not the same, right? I will write on the tablets. I will write on the tablets what I wrote on the first set of luchos, etc., etc. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up, and God gives him the second set of luchos, and he comes down and brings the luchos to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people get full kapara, or get full forgiveness. And that happens on which day? Correct. Which makes it the auspicious day for forgiveness from then onwards. The Jews receive forgiveness on Yom Kippur, and it continues from there. Now, that is a pretty good indication that God forgave the Jewish people. So why do we need to have, what are we saying? The Mishkan is an edus. The Mishkan is like a testimony that testifies that the Jewish people were forgiven. Yeah? We have the luchos. That will be good enough. I know that the Jewish people are forgiven from there. Yeah? Question. Yeah? Interesting question. First time I've ever seen this question was tonight. Yeah?
If they hadn't committed the sin of the golden calf,
yes,
would we not have had the Mishkan then?
It's a good question. That's a discussion amongst the Mefarshim. Yeah. So there are some Mefarshim. I've asked a very good question. It says, what would have happened if we hadn't have had the golden calf? Would we not have had a Mishkan? So some Mefarshim are of the opinion that the Mishkan was always planned. Yeah. It was always part of the plan, and therefore they were always going to have the Mishkan. Yeah. Other Mefarshim say no. That God says, we would not need a Mishkan.
So they wouldn't have offered sacrifices or anything then?
Well, they would have had that great close connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that they wouldn't have needed that. And everybody would have been able to tap into that power and that connection with Hashem in a very real way, in an amazing way, without needing the Mishkan. Okay? So therefore, that's a question. That's a good question. However, says the Sifsei Chachamim, a very beautiful idea. So Sifsei Chachamim says the following: the luchos couldn't be used as proof that the Jewish people were back to quits. Right? Meaning, let me put it this way. Have you ever had an argument with someone, a good friend? Yeah? Have you ever had a big argument with someone, a good friend? And for a while, you weren't even talking. Yes? Never had that?
Not got to that, no.
No, not gotten to that? Yeah? No?
No.
Good for you. I'm talking to a group of really nice people.
Oh, yeah.
They know this is a group of nice people. I know plenty of people that have fallen out with other people and they're just not on talking terms.
Yeah.
That's it.
This can't get back.
And they were good friends.
Yeah.
Now they don't talk. And then what happens is once they're not on talking terms, then who knows you best? Who knows your faults best? Your friends.
Friend, yeah.
Yeah? I know my friends, they all have faults, as do I. My friends know all my faults, I'm sure. Or maybe not all my faults, as I don't know all of my friends' faults either, because some things we camouflage and our friends don't know. But our friends know more. I mean, the person that knows our faults best. Who's the person who knows our faults best? Spouse. Right? Absolutely. I wouldn't say wife, because, you know, it works both ways. So from the husband to the wife, wife to the husband. So it's spouse. Yeah? The spouse really knows the faults. But that's what makes our spouse special. Not their faults, but the fact that, you know, my wife isn't perfect, and my relationship is based with that person that's imperfect. And I'm not perfect in her relationship, and that she's willing to accept me with my imperfections. Not that she looks at me and go, "You're not perfect. I don't even know why I married you." Well, nobody else you would have married would have been perfect either. Right? There's no such thing as a perfect human being. So imperfection is part of the entire thing. Yeah? But your friends know it best, so then your friends, things sometimes get really horrible and nasty between friends. The best of friends sometimes become the worst of enemies. Whereas if you didn't know a guy very well and then you fall out with him, what happens? Whatever. I didn't have much to do with him anyway. So I have nothing to do with him. Big deal. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So what happens then is, so you fall out, and then one Erev Yom Kippur you decide, that's it, I've had enough, this is wrong. I need to make amends. So you come to him and you say, Mr. So-and-so, or Rabbi so-and-so, or my dear friend, or whatever he is, or whatever she is. You go and you apologize profusely and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have treated you the way I treated you. I really do apologize, and I'd like to ask your forgiveness. Okay? Apology accepted. Great. Thank you. Are you back to square one? No. And many times...
They tell you are, but you aren't.
No. And many times you will never get back to that relationship. Because what happened in the interim? I badmouthed him, and he badmouthed me. And we had all sorts of issues and problems. In the interim, there was a lot of water under the bridge. And after all that water under the bridge, it's very difficult to undo it. But at least you said you were sorry. At least the relationship is not completely broken down. It's not entirely broken. So Sifsei Chachamim says, the greatness of the Mishkan is not the fact that God forgave the Jewish people, because that we could have known already from the Luchos. You know where the greatness of the Mishkan lies? It lies in the quality of the forgiveness. What happens at the end of the Parasha, and this is what we read about also, that if you read about this, I heard this from Jeremy Cooper actually this week. He said it, and then I saw it brought in a lot of other Mefarshim. You look at the end of the Sedra, starting from chapter 40, verse 33. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. Page 540. Yeah? So the final thing says, Vayokem es achotzer, he set up the courtyard, Savir la Mishkan Mizbech, around the Mishkan and Mizbech, Vayitin es Moshe Chotzer, and then he makes the gate. He has a curtain that goes by the gate of the Chotzer. Vaychal Moshe Samlacha, done. We're finished with the building. And now comes the crucial part. Vaychas ha'onan es Oel Moed, the cloud of glory covers the Oel Moed, Uchvod Hashem Males HaMishkan, and the honor and the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu fills the Mishkan. Moshe Lava Almighty can't come because the honor is there and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is filling up the Mishkan, so to speak, and whatever that means, that he fills the Mishkan. So do you see what has happened now? The Jewish people have gotten back to square one. Yeah? It's like that famous mashal that they tell. You know, you say, somebody once said, take a wall. Says, okay, hammer in a nail. You hammer in a nail, hammer in another, hammer in another, hammer in all those nails. I said, okay, now pull out the nails. Okay, what are you left with? A whole bunch of holes in the wall. He said, when you say Lashon Hara about somebody, it's like hammering a nail. When you apologize to them, you pull out the nail. But guess what remains? A little hole. Every time you said something, a little hole remains there. Again and again. Right? So that's also very important to realize. So says Rashi, and this is how Rashi actually finishes off. Rashi says it's an Eidus Yisrael, it's a testimony of the Jewish people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vitlam Amasa Egel. Why? Sheharei Hishresh Shchinaso B'neim. He was willing to bring his Shechina, his divine presence amongst them. The fact that he was willing to bring his divine presence amongst them, that is a fantastic, phenomenal thing. Something that's not to be underestimated whatsoever. God has now forgiven them enough to do that. And if you look, Ramban, I think we have mentioned this Nachmanides in Shemos. As the introduction goes, the introduction of Shemos is, it's called Sefer HaGolus V'Geula, the Sefer of Galut, going into exile, V'Geula, and redemption. But for the Sefer of redemption, at what point does the redemption finish, actually? What would you say, Shmuley? Where would the Sefer end? If it was a Sefer about redemption and about...
You're going by the Ramban, I presume.
Yes. Where would you... If I would ask you, where does the redemption end in Sefer Shemos?
In theory, when they leave Egypt.
No, a little bit later,
That's
just
Sinai.
a little bit more.
But they want...
No, not even Sinai.
They want...
The end of the...
They want the Torah to be given, etc. as well.
So we're getting to that. Yeah, we're getting to that. But the end of the redemption really is when they cross the Red Sea. Their enemies are drowned. No more enemies. We are free. And the end of this book. Now we should start another book.
That's only physical.
Well, I'm getting to that, right? Now we start another book. What's the next book, right? Now we should have started another book. And that book should be the book of giving of the Torah. But why is the giving of the Torah and the building of the tabernacle part of this Sefer about Galut going into exile and Geula being freed? How does that make sense? Says Nachmanides, because freedom is not only a physical freedom, and that the Sefer can only be finished, and we can only talk about true Geula when the Jewish people not only have come out of their physical exile, but they are back at the level that they started with, came the beginning of Shemos when they still had our forefathers with them. We had the forefathers, we had the dip, goes down, moves on. The whole time in Egypt, you come out, get the Torah, golden calf, build the Mishkan, back to the same level. That's a big deal. That's something big. And that's what he speaks about over here. That is the edus. That is your testimony that God has forgiven the Jewish people, because he's not only forgiven them to say, okay, you said I'm sorry, apology accepted. More than apology accepted. Let's get back together again as if it never happened. That's huge. And that's what we celebrate. Okay? That's the first thing. I'll just mention one more thing and then we'll move on to the Megillah. A beautiful thought that I saw tonight on the Megillah. We say, Eile Pekudei Mishkan, Mishkan Eidos. These are the countings of the Mishkan. Why do we say these are the countings of the Mishkan? First of all, it's a middle, it's very weird because we finished the building of the Mishkan. Hey, Joe's here. We finished the building of the Mishkan. After finishing the building of the Mishkan, what we do is we count the money and then we move on to what? The clothes. Well, shouldn't you wait till you finished all of the stuff for the Mishkan and then have the count? Yeah? He should say, this is the Mishkan, these are the clothes that they made in the Mishkan. Now let's count how much raw materials they needed to use. Okay? Question number one. Asked by Rav Hirsch. Question number two that he asks is, these aren't all the countings of the Mishkan. What do we mention? Some gold, some silver, some copper, but not all of it. None of the wools, none of the wood, none of the other materials, the stones, nothing. They're all not counted. The only thing that's kind of bit of gold, a bit of Sevet Tzara. So what is this? It's not really the Mishkan. It's not the full counting. It's a middle of everything. Well, what are we doing? So Rav Hirsch has a very beautiful idea. He says, which Mishkan or which version of the Beis HaMikdash was actually the most potent version of this in existence? The Mishkan? Beis HaMikdash number 1 or Beis HaMikdash number 2? Mishkan, by far. There was nothing to compare to the Mishkan. There wasn't anything like the Mishkan. The Mishkan was an amazing thing. God literally put his presence in the Mishkan. That's what we just read about before. You could see God's divine presence resting in the Mishkan. In the Beis HaMikdash, there were some miracles, but those miracles were not the divine presence of God. You read in Pirkei Avos, 10 things happened in the Mishkan, in the Beis HaMikdash. So the smoke went up straight, and women never fainted from the fact that it smelled of an abattoir, and people didn't say it was difficult in Jerusalem. A whole bunch of different nisim that they said. You can bow down properly, even though it was very, very squished. Everybody had room to bow down. Certain nisim that you said, wow, that's miraculous. But there's a very big difference between a miracle and God's divine presence being visible. The second being a lot more impressive, and also being a lot better for the connection that you create. Yeah? So that's an important point to keep in mind. And so therefore, when we read about the Mishkan, which one was the biggest edifice, by the way? At what point was the Mishkan, what point was the Beis HaMikdash at its greatest physically?
The first.
Nope. The Herodian. The Herodian temple was the greatest one. And the Gemara says, if you didn't see Mishal Ara, if you didn't see the building of Herod, the temple, the Ra Binyam Yamav, he's never seen a great building. Herod created this amazing Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara says. Beyond what Shlomo Deviana, he went all out. Now, he had killed out all the Chachamim and he felt bad, so he wanted to make up for it, so he built this just unbelievable building. But you have the most unbelievable building, but if you go through the history books and look at what happened and the time of the Beis HaMikdash and the last 100 years of Beis HaMikdash, it was as corrupt as they get. Every Kohen Gadol...
Just for the boys.
Pardon?
Just for the boys.
No, it didn't last the year.
They didn't last the year.
No.
Came Yom Kippur, next. Yom Kippur, next. Nobody mattered. Why? Because we kept on having a whole bunch of people that were not really worthy of being Kohen Gadol, who bought their way into the Kohen Gadol. Wow, my mother-in-law's here. That's a big thing. Yeah? So they bought their way into the Kohen Gadol. So you have the most beautiful of buildings. But what's the atmosphere like there?
Not the same.
Totally different. Do you know what else they were missing? As you said, what were they missing?
The ark wasn't there.
Well, the ark wasn't there, so that's not cool. To have a mishkan, to have a temple without an ark is missing quite an important thing. Okay, so the vernacular example of this would be: I have been to some fancy weddings. You have been to some weddings that they've not spared any expense, spent good money, 5 figures up to 6 figures, but no atmosphere. You went to a good party that had no atmosphere, you think to yourself, what a shame. They spent so much money putting together this thing, and it just feels empty. It feels horrible. And vice versa. I've been to some very cheap weddings. I remember as Bochum, we once got invited. There was a Baal Tshuva that was marrying a Baal Tshuva, or there was somebody who was a ger. I don't remember exactly what the story was. And we got a phone call that this wedding, this mitzvah wedding that was going on, it was literally a Simchas Chassan Kala where none of us had ever met either the Chassan or the Kala. We all just got into taxis, and the guys just absolutely, for 2 hours, rocked the place. But literally, the guy, when the wedding was over, he was standing there. He couldn't believe it. That 50 people whom he had never met before waltzed into that hall because they knew that there was nobody going to be there. And before we came, there was no atmosphere whatsoever. A whole bunch of people looking around, I don't know, there's music playing. Should we be getting up out of our seat? We came in and we danced and we sang. And it was just Amazing. And I remember him saying to each one of us, he says, you made this day so special for me. How can I ever thank you? Can you imagine what you did for this guy? And this was, the wedding. What was that? What did they serve already? It's Eretz Yisrael wedding. It was a tiny little hall. The hall wasn't much bigger than the Nat Barkley, right? And the food, a bit of schnitzel, a bit of nothing. Very simple Israeli wedding. We didn't even eat anything. We just drank. We just had some Pepsi. That's it. You didn't have Coke because I was a Badatz hall, so you have to have Pepsi. But that's how it goes. But whatever it be that as it may, the main point was at that wedding, it still stands out in my mind as one of the most amazing weddings that I went to. I still, till today, at the time, maybe I knew the chossen's name. I don't know the chossen's name. I couldn't tell you what his name was. I just don't know. But I remember that being one of the most special weddings I've ever been at. And not for the money, and not for the size of the hall, and not for the great band, or the flowers, or the food, or anything. Do you know what it was? It was a whole bunch of people that went in there and said, we're going to make a difference, and we're going to make this wedding the most beautiful wedding that you can imagine. And it was, without all the money. And that's what we have here. You have a Mishkan, where the amount of money spent on the Mishkan was paltry, compared to the money that was spent on the first temple, and how much more so the money that was spent on the second temple. But we say this is where it's all at. You want to talk about real holiness? You want to talk about a place that was infused with holiness and that was a special place? It was the Mishkan Ha'edus that we spoke about before. You saw God's presence there. You might have a beautiful building at the second temple, but to have that beautiful building and to not have God's presence and to not have an Aron Kodesh and to have the Kohen Gadol dying every year, who cares how beautiful your building looks? Sometimes I feel I go into shuls. You ever been to shuls that become like heritage? They have become listed buildings. They barely get a minyan, only get a minyan once every 2-3 months. And you think to yourself, what did you list this building for? What are we holding on to? Bricks and mortar? Look, 50 years ago, this shul was full and people would have a beautiful shul. And now? Well, now people don't even live in this town. There's no youth here. The town's going to die out. But we listed the building so that everybody can see what the building was once.
Yeah, no, they've got to spend money on preserving it forever.
Yeah, and it's just, it's strange. I'm not against listing all sorts of buildings, but you look at it sometimes and you think to yourself, what was the point of listing this thing? There's nobody here. Wouldn't the Jewish people benefit more if they sold out that beautiful building instead of holding on to it and keeping it as a source, draining our coffers, and put that money into communities that are growing, that need places of worship? And maybe you can buy 2 or 3 that are not as grandiose, but at least they have people davening there. What's the point of a beautiful shul where nobody davens? What's the point? And that's Eilep Pekudei Mishkan. We count the Mishkan now because we say, you know what? This Mishkan, look how little was donated. But this is the real thing. When you want to know where the soul of the Jewish people is, where the temple is that really made the difference, that's this one. Okay? So much so for the Chumash. Now we're going to do something about the Megillah. So we are in Megillah Esther. And tonight, I'm going to say something that I don't think I've seen yet. We are in the 7th chapter of the Megillah. I don't have the Megillah with, I can't see. Keep turning the page. Another one. Stop. No, you go back one page. And we will be on page 1258 in the Art Scroll Chumashim. 1258 Art Scroll Chumash. So now Haman's been humiliated because he's gotten stuff thrown all over him. So the king and Haman come together to drink with Esther. And the Melech says to Esther, he says to Esther on the second day at this feast of wine, Esther, what is your request? And what do you ask for? Up to half of the kingdom I'm willing to do. So what is Batan Esther Malkavatomer? She says, Esther says back, if I find favor in the king's eyes, and if the king would like to do the following, I want my soul as my thing that I request, ve'ami bevakoshasi, and my nation as the thing that I pine for, the thing that I request or that I ask for. So what is she'ela and what is a bakasha? She'ela really means a question. Bakasha means a request. So Achashverosh says to her, well, what is your she'ela? What is your bakasha? And she says, well, I have a she'ela and I have a bakasha. She'ela is my life. Bakasha is everybody else's life. Well, what's the difference between she'elos and bakashasi? So some of the Mefarshim here say that the difference between she'elos and bakashasi depends whether you're talking about for yourself. That's how the Gaon understands it. The Gaon says she'elasi al atzmeich, on yourself. Bakashasi is al acherim. And so therefore she says, Tinasini nafshi she'elasi, I'm asking for my own life. You want to ask me what my request is? Spare me. Ask me what other people's request is? Don't kill my entire nation. Okay? That's she'elasi bakashasi, the way the Gaon learns it. But the way the Malbim says something beautiful, the Malbim says that at first also, and then he says another thing. He says, she'ela and bakasha, which one is a stronger word? She'ela means a question. Bakasha is really a request. You know, if I say, I have a question to ask you, or I have a request, which one of the two is asking for more? The request is stronger. Says Malbim, well, look what happens here. Look what's going on. He says, many times you have people that don't want something to happen, don't want calamities or tragedies to happen, but they have a personal vested interest. So we spoke about this a few weeks ago when we spoke about the story of my fellow in the airport. Remember the guy that was the homeless guy in the airport that I gave money to? And we spoke about at the time about giving money to someone and sometimes giving just to calm your own guilt, just to feel better in yourself. So sometimes we don't want something to happen, but you hear people say, I couldn't handle it if something like that happens. What does that mean, I couldn't handle it if something like that happens? How do you understand that? It's sort of to say, it's not that I mind so much that it happens, but I couldn't handle the repercussions on myself. I would feel terrible if that happened. Yeah? You say sometimes, I would feel terrible if somebody lost money because of me. Think about it. You feeling terrible. I would feel terrible that the person lost money. Forget about your own feelings. What is that? I would feel terrible? Who asked you? Why does it become about you in the first place?
Guilt feeling too.
Yeah, there's a lot of guilt. And sometimes people are more, they're not so much into the justice, but they're very much into their own guilt. That's what the Malbim says. You get that sometimes. Esther shows herself to be the opposite. What is my small request? What is my she'ela? What do I ask for, the small request? Tinosen li nafshi b'she'elasi. Achashverosh, my little request is, let me live. Ve'ami b'vakoshasi. But my nation, that's my big request. That's what I'm desperate for.
At this stage, does he know who her nation was?
Well, she's telling him. Yeah, she's telling him.
At this stage.
Yeah. Okay, she keeps on going, can you kind of me? And, it's interesting because part of the question and the discussion here needs to be that Achashverosh asks the question, Miuzev Ezehu, who did this? What do you mean, who did this? Do you not remember, this didn't happen so long ago. Haman sat with you 3 or 4 days ago. They came up with this plan. You signed this stupid decree. And now when I say there's a whole mass genocide's going to happen. Really? Since when? Did I miss something? Hey, what's going on in my town, in my place here with my castle without me? What are you talking about? The Gemara says almost that Esther was going to point straight at Achashverosh. Ish tzave oyev. And she pointed at Achashverosh. And the Malach came and moved the finger and said, no. There's a limit. Don't push your luck there. That's not a good one. Who did that? You. Me? Are you dissing me? Are you starting up with me? That wasn't a good way to go. So Malach says, no, that side. So then she says, Haman Araza. But she started pointing at Achashverosh. So, what the Malbim says, though, is this beautiful idea that Esther says this is not about me. It never was and it never will be. I'm willing to die. Sheilasi, my little request, my life. But you might say, you know what? I can't give you everything. Fine. Don't give me my request. You can kill me. I don't mind. Ami bevakoshosi. But I am asking you, Hashem, make sure that I'm asking you, Achashverosh, I'm sorry, make sure that the Jewish people survives. That's what I'm desperate for. And even if I don't survive this, I don't care if I don't survive this. I'm willing to die. But make sure that my people live. That's a great person. There's a new idea in how great Esther is. Because Esther says, and she says straight to Achashverosh, I don't care, kill me. As long as you keep them alive. I don't mind. I'll give up my life. I'm happy with that. No issue. Just make sure they stay alive. And that is really, really meaningful. It's really precious. And you know, it's interesting that Esther stays alive. Remember my sister telling me, because they learned Megillah Esther. Esther stays alive, but the truth is that Esther's life, of the characters in Tanakh, one of the most tragic characters, Eov is one of the most tragic characters, but one of the other most tragic characters in the entire of Tanakh is Esther. Think about it. You have a Beis Yaakov girl, very frum woman, married, who gets schlepped into the palace, who gets taken as the wife of some bloodthirsty, crazy monarch, who gets forced into relations with him. I mean, this woman wasn't excited about sharing a bed with Achashverosh. I can assure you that. You might even ask the question, how come she didn't have to give up her life for it? You have all that going on. All that going on. And in the end, what happens? Everybody lives happily ever after? Almost. What's the final? Who doesn't live happily ever after in the story? Esther. She remains married for the rest of her life to this Rasha called Achashverosh. That's harsh. That's hard. And so Esther, what I find is amazing about Esther is not so much that she was willing to give up her life. Meaning, look, kill me, and as long as you keep the rest of the nation going, I'm happy to die. She gave up her life as in living in this world. And sometimes it's a lot easier to just walk away. There are people that sometimes find that they cannot face the music, cannot face the trouble. Pardon?
She gave up her freedom, didn't she?
She gave up her freedom.
Sure.
But you know, sometimes people say it's a lot harder to live through your problems than it is to just commit suicide and leave. Mm-hmm. Let somebody else pick up the problems. I'm out. But to look those problems in the face, or to live through that for the rest of your life, that's Gehenna. Mm-hmm. That's hell on this earth. And Esther goes through that. Well, that's the greatness of Esther. That's the greatness of this leader. She comes into the palace of Achashverosh. She does what she needs to do. She's living a life of misery. And with all that, she then says, as long as you save the Jewish people, you can kill me. I don't mind. I'm willing to give up. I will give up my life. If that means you will listen to my other request, then I'm out. No problem. Gives you an understanding of greatness of Esther. So that's the ideas for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Please God, we continue next week. If you enjoy this, please either share it with friends or like it and send it on so that other people can enjoy this video. And we hope you see you next week.
Stop.